Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. So welcome to another episode of It Starts With You, and my wonderful guest today, Sam. Sam, to start with, would you like to introduce yourself and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. My name is Sam Rathling. I am a LinkedIn expert and social selling strategist. So that means that I basically help people make money, not noise, from the LinkedIn platform.
And that's wonderful because we all need to know how to do that, don't we?
Indeed, for sure.
So for our listeners, obviously, I know what your profile star is. Do you want to describe your personality, your behaviour style in terms of what that means for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would be very high I on the disc profile, which means that I am very much a people person. I am very much about putting me into social situations. Everything for me in business is about building relationships, and that's my kind of dominant style. I do have quite a high element of the D as well. So I guess, for me, I'm not really much about the detail. I'd much rather have a bullet point proposal sent to me by somebody or that kind of thing. So anytime that there's process or admin or lengthy spreadsheets or anything like that, that just like completely puts me off. So definitely people and quite a lot of DME as well.
Okay. So, and for those of you who've listened to any of the previous ones, especially the trailer, you'll understand that is also very similar to my style. So people like
Just a
me
little
and
bit.
yeah, people like me and Sam just get along. We don't need to make the effort. We don't need to adapt our stuff. It's just about rubbing along with each other. But before you knew what your behavior was and the impact that you'd have on others, did you have any awareness of what life was like before that?
I think I did have definitely some awareness. I probably didn't understand myself fully in terms of how I needed to be. You know, I also have ADHD as well. So I just thought that the way I do things and things like that was maybe being driven by some of my kind of neurodiverse challenges. I think it definitely before I always knew that I was quite a social kind of butterfly, etc., but I didn't know that it was really kind of linked to how I behave in certain situations and things like that. So, although I would probably have known a lot of my traits, from a profiling perspective, I wouldn't have necessarily been aware of the impact of them on aspects of my life.
Okay, so since you've understood what your profile is, what would you say as a leader and as someone who does what you do? How are you
Hmm.
aware of it? What impact has it had on you knowing your style?
I think the first thing is when I'm working with my team. So I have a team of six, and for me, it was about communicating my profile and my style to the team so that they know how to work with me best. I think that's one of the fantastic things that, knowing your style, knowing your behavior can actually help you with. So, the team, if they were going to come to me with something for sign off or they're going to come to me with an idea, there are certain ways to do that with me versus, them not knowing my style. So how I am in meetings, how I show up for them, how we communicate and how they communicate with me, etc. That definitely has had an impact. Outside of work as well, I have three children. I'm a single mom. And I definitely found after knowing my profile and also having done the exercise with my son, my eldest son, like we were clashing a lot communication wise because he is the polar opposite of me when it comes to the profile. So he couldn't get me. He didn't understand why I was the way I was and vice versa. But after he also understood his profile, like we started communicating more effectively. So, I'll talk to anyone, probably you are the same. Like I'll be in a queue or I'll be in an elevator or, I'll just make friends, put me in a room of strangers and come out with loads of friends. Whereas he was like, why are you talking to people, mom? Why are you making conversations with these people? And I'm like, because that's the way I am. Like that's my style. And he has Asperger's as well as ADHD and some other things as well. But knowing his profile, like he kind of started to understand why I do that and why I am the way I am. And it's not right or wrong. It's just that we are totally different when it comes to our behaviors and our styles.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's great in terms of being able to use the tool for personal relationships outside of the work, because this isn't a business tool. It's,
No.
it's a human tool. Where you said
Yeah.
there about obviously with your team, so that your team know how to communicate with you and how to approach you when it's, I'd say it's probably a be bright, be brief, be gone, if you need to present something, Sam. But how do you, oh, I suppose that's the question really, isn't it? Do you adapt your style for them? Do you know what your team's style is as well?
Yeah, we've done this work across the team as well. I think it's quite important if you are a leader, or you're building a company and you have people working for you or with you. I think it's really important that you understand like everybody in the business, because it's not just about them knowing how you operate, but I think it goes both ways. If you understand how your team operate, then I think communication overall can be a lot better. I think it can save a lot of time as well. I mean, I know I will go into a meeting, we'll spend the first 10-15 minutes talking about everything but work. But work. But like when we get down to business, it's like, it's quick fire, right? So I'm at that combination of, kind of the happy, friendly, fun side of things, but also let's get down to business. So I've got that kind of good balance. But I think everybody knowing and understanding each other's can be really helpful, because there can be miscommunication, there can be misunderstanding of each other's behaviors. And, ultimately, when you're building a business, you want the culture to be good, and the culture can be better, in my opinion, if everybody understands each other's styles.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that big thing there, when you said communication, you started off by saying, I like bullet points. If something comes to me and it's just overwhelming, especially, if you've got ADHD as well, it's just like you look at it and you think, oh, I'm going to put that in the too difficult box. It's too much information for me to take in there.
For
So
sure.
I want to come to what you do yourself in terms of being a LinkedIn expert guru. God, I'd probably call you in terms of LinkedIn.
Thanks.
Could you maybe explain, in terms of knowing DISC and the profiles, because people will use LinkedIn differently. How
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have an understanding of DISC overall, there are quite a few easy ways to kind of look at someone's profile and actually even kind of make an assumption about what type of profile that person is. So typically, someone like ourselves who's quite high I would probably have quite a lot of colors and maybe be quite flamboyant on their profile picture. For example, they might be wearing something a little bit more standoutish, etc. Their banner, for example, might be a bit more bright and bold, etc. So there's certain visual clues that you can pick up from someone's profile. I think as well, in terms of those more detailed oriented people, chances are that there are going to be elements of their profile which are going to indicate to you that they are more of kind of an S or a C. And there are actually tools available that you can overlay over the top of LinkedIn that will help you determine styles or predict styles. It's obviously not as accurate as having a full DISC profile, but there are tools like Crystal Knows and Humantic, which are AI tools that you can overlay over a LinkedIn profile and actually get an indication to about 85-90% accuracy on what that person's potential style may be. So if you are using something like LinkedIn to prospect and to build your network and to approach people from a sales perspective, the way that you message a high D person is going to be completely different to the way that you message someone that's a high S or C profile. So you can use those elements to pick out like how you would approach from a prospecting perspective, or how you might build a relationship with somebody in their inbox once you've maybe interacted on the newsfeed. So I think it's useful for a whole facet of things. I mean, obviously I'm in sales and marketing, and not understanding this DISC and understanding psychological profiling and all that kind of stuff is so interesting to me when it comes to the sales process and when it comes to how people buy and how people behave on the platform, for sure.
Definitely. Can you just remind me of what those overlay tools are again for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. One of them is called Crystal Nose, like KNOWS, Crystal Nose. And the other one is called Humantic, which is HUMANTIC, Humantic. But they are fascinating. Both of them have a free option to kind of try before you buy. But they are tools that I train in my masterclasses to, corporate sales teams and to business owners as well. Because and a lot of people come into that and they've never heard of this before. They don't even know what their own profile is. So it's important that you understand what it is so that you can then interpret that information. But it literally gives you, this is what to say in an email, this is how to approach this person, this is how to negotiate with this person. So I think they are fascinating tools. But having a strong knowledge of DISC before using them can be useful as well.
Oh, definitely. And I'll make sure that that's in the show notes for those two AI tools. So I know in terms of my style, I'm very similar to you, high I, so it's outgoing and peoply focused. But I know that on LinkedIn, I get irritated by people who just connect and straight in with a sales pitch. I'm just like, where's the rapport building? Is it my personality or is that just everyone on LinkedIn? Because I don't think
No, I think that's everyone on LinkedIn. It's like another bad prospecting.
So why do people do it on LinkedIn? Why do people think that's a good thing?
Well, I'm on a mission, obviously, to turn that around. But unfortunately, they don't know any better, especially salespeople. They're given targets, they're told to go and do things. And in my experience, majority of them are just given a LinkedIn license or given Sales Navigator, and they're told to go off, build a list, and go prospect people. And they're just not given any like formal education or training on these things. And they get left to their own devices. And typically, salespeople who are out there trying to get sales think that if you take the traditional kind of cold calling, throw as much mud as it and see what sticks, it's a volume numbers game for them. But obviously LinkedIn is clamping down on that a lot more now, so you will find less and less of it. But unfortunately it isn't our personality thing or our style thing. It's just that is unfortunately how a lot of people choose to use the platform. I think it is getting better and think people are getting a lot more savvy to it. But it does mean that you've got to really up your game on LinkedIn if you want to cut through all that noise. The average number of prospecting messages that a decision maker is getting per day is about 10 on average at the moment, which means that's 50 a week. That's 200 a month. So if you are going to use LinkedIn to cut through that noise, I do recommend using things like voice notes and video notes, which will appeal to people like you and I that like to be kind of all about the relationship. So I've got clients getting a lot of success sending video messages and voice messages, bringing their personal style through rather than just sending text. So that's a really kind of good tip for people that want to, especially when you're targeting, someone that maybe doesn't have a lot of time, or somebody that is just going to go hit delete on those standard kind of sales pitches that they get. Standing out from the crowd and doing things slightly differently and leveraging whatever style it is that you have to make a difference and cut through the noise.
That's really interesting. And then in terms of the volume of messages that people are getting. So in terms of the different styles, so someone who is opposite to us, like your son, as you said, which is on the reserved side of things, more task focused, the more detailed side of things. Mm-hmm. Would they use LinkedIn like we use LinkedIn? I mean, how do they use it?
I mean, I don't think they would necessarily use LinkedIn in the same way. So the idea of doing a video or putting themselves out there would be like, whoa, like I'm just not doing that. They tend to be, in my experience, a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more less likely to want to connect with people that they don't know. So for people that are more kind of on the S&C side of things, they're going to be more likely to back away from doing that kind of big blitz of like, I'm just going to connect with anybody, because you and I would be like, oh, I'm going to make friends with whoever. But they would probably be a bit more strategic about their approach. They would probably also be the people that would spend a lot of time and effort over the detail of their content or the detail of their messages and things like that. So they probably would go at it in a slightly different way, but I in my experience would be a slightly more ineffective way. So I think it's about them definitely using, it can be useful to be quite detailed. So for example, if you're building a list of potential prospects, spending that time going through the filters, looking for the right people, that's a real detail oriented thing. I'm in the middle of doing that for my own business a minute. It's mind numbingly boring, but it's probably something that they would really love to do, like sitting behind a computer screen, not talking to anyone, and finding 500 people that they want to like send a message to. Like, I find it really boring and dull to do that, but they would love a job like that. They would love to sit there and do that and go through everything. So I think they definitely would use it in a different way. They would probably be putting out boring content though, as in they would think it was really interesting and detailed and lovely. But, I had a client the other day that was going to put out a 60-page white paper on the newsfeed as like a piece of content. I'm like, whoa, like, like slow down a minute. Like, you probably want to consider maybe doing a slightly shortened version of it, especially because the people they're targeting are in more senior roles and are typically going to be more high D type people. So I think it's just about considering who your target audience is and looking at what the skew of profiling that would sit primarily in that. So if you're targeting C-suite executives, for example, who sit in the boardroom, who make decisions about budgets, and that's your target market, then chances are that a high percentage of them, not all of them, but a high percentage of them are going to be more on the D side of things, probably with an element of S or C. But if you're targeting business owners, maybe coaches or photographers or videographers, you're going to have a very different style of people in there. So I think it really does depend on your target market, who you're going for, and then adapting your style. Even if your style is not to be kind of all about the relationships and all about people, in some ways you kind of have to be on the platform because it is about networking and building relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, in my masterclasses, I always talk about, when I talk about the I style, it's about connections and stuff. And I talk about, you'll have connections on LinkedIn that you've never met. You'll even have people on Facebook that you don't know, but friends of friends. And you can see the people who don't have I as dominant in their style looking with like amazement of like, you'd connect with someone that you didn't know. And we're like that, but that's what we're all about. And it is
Yeah.
that. So if you're trying to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, just in terms of messages, because if you're on your phone, actually, what is the percentage of people LinkedIn using it on a desktop or a laptop versus a mobile device?
So it would be about 70% on the mobile app.
Okay, so on the mobile app, you can send an invitation to connect with someone, but it doesn't, like the desktop does, say, don't forget to add a note. I know you can, because you can go and do a personalized invitation, but most people don't. What impact does it have trying to connect with somebody on LinkedIn if you don't add a personal note?
So there's a couple of theories on this. So pre-pandemic and during pandemic, it was really, really important for you to highly personalize. And I do recommend, if you're in a sales function, you're going for more senior level people, again, really personalizing those messages. However, because there's been such an uplift in the amount of connect and pitch style type messages where people are prospecting really badly, sometimes actually the personalization piece can actually hinder, because a lot of people think, oh, they're just going to slap me with a pitch as soon as I've connected with them. So I am testing the theory at the moment, myself and the team, on the impact. But my rule around it is this: if they are peer level to me, or not lower level, but in terms of like the seniority of a person. So if they're a small business owner like me, or a coach or a consultant or a speaker or a trainer, I don't generally personalize that invitation, because I know they'll look at my profile, they go, oh, they're just like me, and they're more likely to connect. And I've not seen a massive dip in that. However, if I'm going after a chief revenue officer or a chief sales officer or a CEO of a scale up tech company or a big brand, I hyper personalize those invitations. Not massive long notes, like the notes are only 300 characters, but I make sure that they definitely know that I have looked at their profile, taken something from that, and then message them, knowing it's not automated, or it's not the same thing I'm sending to everybody. So I use two slightly different styles now, because there isn't a massive impact on the just hitting connect now versus personalizing. So that's my kind of approach on it.
That's interesting. And if you're on audio, you obviously can't see my face, but if you saw this or you're watching it on my YouTube channel, I was trying not to laugh hilariously when Sam said there about, if you personalize an invitation and you just look at it and you go, no, you're just going to hit me with spam delete, because that's what goes on in my head. I look at it and I see, or I'll get an invitation that says, oh, I see we've got lots of connections together, and they'll mention a connection, and I'll look and I'll think, we've only got 4 connections. And that connection that you've mentioned, I've absolutely no idea who they are because they're someone that's connected like you. And I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, ignore. So, and
Versus if they'd have actually just hit connect, you probably wouldn't have had that even going through your head, right? So I think there's a definite shift recently, certainly in the last 6 to 12 months, where it actually is probably better not to personalize. However, there's still certain types of people that I would always do it with, because when I'm training sales teams who are also going to be prospecting in the boardroom and are going to be prospecting in big enterprise companies, I need to be approaching those people in the way that I would train their team to do that. So, but if it's peer level, I never send a connection message with it now. Although, you know, if you'd have listened to me 24 months ago and back for the last 13 years, I'd have been like, always personalize. But it's just because of this massive spike. There's been a 40% increase in direct messaging on LinkedIn since the pandemic. So a lot more people are coming to LinkedIn to make connections and to build relationships. But as you said, there's a lot of them doing it really badly. Our CEO, Nick, he gets on average 20 to 50 messages a day of people trying to sell him something. So he now has just like a little YouTube video that he pings back to every single one of them, and it sends them off to his YouTube channel. It's a little 2-3 minute intro basically saying, you know, I get a lot of these. Thanks very much for connecting with me. And of course, he reverse pitches them because of the fact that we have a company that helps people do this better. But, you know, that video has been watched well over 600 times the last couple of months. And that's just him pinging a video back to everybody that bad pitches him. But they're all an opportunity for us to, you know, to help them do better. Right. So.
Well, absolutely.
So if you are sick of it, it's quite a nice, I mean, it can be a nice little tip just to like ping a video back to them. So I don't ignore the people that are trying. Like, I obviously want to help them, but, you know, even just having that response back, that sets you apart. And whatever style you are, like, do that however you want. But like, if you're in a high I and you're all about relationships, maybe just send them a video back or a voice note back, or sending them off to a YouTube video to thank them for their message, etc. You know, and send them in my direction. I'll help them out.
Well, that's what I'm just thinking, actually. I might send them this little podcast link back again, going, this is how you
exactly
personalities and how to do this properly. But
exactly
it's that I'm doing it, and I'm a high I, and I love connecting with people and being interactive. Yet even me, as my style, I'm going, no. So if I'm doing it, thinking of people who are polar opposite to us, are just going to be so turned off by it. It's really fascinating. I mean, I live and breathe this, as you know, and I just love understanding people. So in terms of the sales cycle itself, and I obviously know that, you know, I styles, we are, you know, impulsive, and we have clothes in our wardrobe with labels on still, because we just bought them in the sale and we have no idea why. And there are people there listening to this now thinking, really? Why would you do that? Because that's our style. So people, you know, we're more impulsive in terms of the buying styles, and obviously the further you go around on disc terms, the more you have to build the relationship and understand the stuff like that. But if you're doing that on LinkedIn, I mean, people aren't going to just buy off of a message on LinkedIn, or do they?
No,
they
used to. 4 or 5 years ago, you could prospect somebody, send them a message, book a meeting. Like, it was, you know, with the right wording and the right messaging and everything else. These days, prospecting, engaging, and posting just isn't enough. And the big thing is that most people don't see LinkedIn as a place to sell, but ultimately most people are there to either sell something or because they're super bored. LinkedIn should be considered the traffic source, right? So most people don't have a sales and marketing end-to-end process in place for their business. And they think that they can use something like LinkedIn to send a message, get a meeting, and sell. But ultimately, it doesn't work like that. We talk about this in Pipeline 44 all the time, but it's, you know, there needs to be a number of things that happen before somebody moves from being connected with you on LinkedIn to actually becoming a client. And it's about 2 separate things. It's about dwell time, which is the amount of time that that person has invested with your brand over a period of time. And it's about 4 or 5 hours they need to have invested by the time they actually get to a point where they're ready to buy from you. So, for example, we use LinkedIn events and webinars to build our pipeline. And in doing so, that person connects with us. They see a bit of our content. That's maybe a few minutes of their time. They get invited to come to an event. They spend 90 minutes on an event with us. They might not buy on that one. They might go and watch some other stuff. They might head off to our YouTube channel or listen to a podcast like this one, for example. Then, they might come to another event that we put on. And 5 hours later, that person has had a big enough mindset shift for them to go, oh, actually, I think I can do business with this person. Actually, I now understand that they can help me because they've spent that much time invested, which is why a podcast is a great idea, because a podcast is doing that exact thing. It's nurturing people through, for example. But the second thing is touch points. So just by sending someone a message, it's just one touch point. And then they might see you in the newsfeed for a bit, 2 or 3 pieces of content, maybe something like that, a couple of other touch points. But there needs to be, from posting and connecting, there needs to be a conversion mechanism in place. And most businesses don't have that conversion mechanism in place. And they wonder why they don't get business from LinkedIn. So that's the stuff that we teach our clients. And LinkedIn really is the traffic source. You have the connection stage. Once you've got your message and your offer and your product and everything clear, you've got that kind of connection stage, which is where you are building relationships, connecting. Then you've got to move those people off the LinkedIn platform. So whether that's capturing their email so that they're on a list, using a lead magnet, getting them to an event where they have to exchange their email address in order to get more knowledge from you, etc. That bit there is the bit that most people miss, because they're trying to do everything on the platform and they're not taking people off the platform to then continue the conversation outside. And then it's about having something that shifts their mindset to go, I need to work with this person. And things like webinars, LinkedIn events, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc. Lots of those things do that. But people should come to you when you book a meeting with them, ready to buy. And that's not happening for the majority of people on LinkedIn.
And do you know what? That is so fascinating, Sam, because what just summed up in that little bit is it's about getting people off the platform and forming a relationship outside the platform. Because I think about myself, again, talking about our styles as well. And I just want to think about what people post on LinkedIn. Do you think different styles prefer different content? So, you've got polls, you've got newsletters, you've got all that. How do you think that impacts in terms of personalities?
Oh, massively. I think, someone who's high D is probably going to respond to a poll if it's of interest to them, because it's one click of a button. It takes them no time. As long as it's not some big, long, drawn out, description, quick question, quick answer, boom, like they will totally engage in a poll. Chances of them reading a long article, unlikely, unless it's kind of bullet pointed in its style or summarized in some way. So let's take the high Ds to begin with. I'll kind of go through that. A high D would probably watch a 30-second video, but they're not going to sit there and watch a 10-minute. They're not going to attend a 90-minute webinar. It's just not their style at all. And I think with the high Ds, carousels, all those kind of PDF documents, if it's a topic they're interested in, if it's high bullet point level, they'll definitely engage in a PDF document that's going to take them less than 30 seconds to get through. It's just give me the bullet points. Like, I'll whiz through some of those in like 10 seconds, but consume it all because that's my style. But somebody who is much more S or C is going to go, hang on a second, that's only the bullet points. Like, where's the rest of it? So I definitely think different styles would engage in different things. Let's take the high I's. Like, I's are going to be like, they're going to engage in posts where there's selfies. They're going to engage in posts where there's like a big event happening and lots of people. They're going to engage in video content. They're going to engage in anything that gives them a better insight to the person. So that's the kind of content that a high I would engage with for sure. They would probably also, depending on the topic, they'd probably also engage in slightly longer form content, but anything that's people oriented, they're definitely going to engage with. That's why the selfie posts and things like that do quite well, because a lot of people are, I don't know what the percentage is, you know better than me, Vic, but in terms of like people in business, a lot of people are more on the D&I side of things, right? Would that be fair? Or
Well,
People that are content creators, what do you think?
I no, because the other side of the profiling, they would outsource it. They know they need to do it. It's just the fact that we are the outgoing side of it. We are far more in your face, so we are
Yeah.
there. We'll just post anything. That's the kind of thing that we'll just go, yeah, chuck it out. It's not perfect. Whereas
Chuck it.
C style, well, that's what we do, isn't it? But whereas the C style, very much more detail oriented, they'll probably, dare I say it, if you're listening and your C style might procrastinate over it a little bit more. It's
A little
perfection,
bit.
perfection, perfection, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, and they'll probably write it and then reread it and rewrite it 15 times before they actually are ready for it to go onto the newsfeed, right? So they're going to take a lot more time to actually get that, that ready for posting. They're probably going to be much more likely to post a much more lengthy text only type post. That the chances of them getting behind a camera, doing a video, putting themselves, like, they'll be very uncomfortable doing a selfie on the newsfeed. Like, that would be a big step for them to kind of put themselves out there in that way. I do think, like, newsletters, everybody should have one. But again, there are going to be different styles reading that newsletter. So you've got to make sure it's got a combination of all the different types of content that would hit each of those disc styles. I'm the same when I put together a smart link, which is a sales navigator feature. But I always recommend to clients, like, if you're going to put a smart link together with 5 to 10 different items in it, you've got to make sure that they all resonate with the different styles of people that could be reading it. So, you need to have a high level 1-pager version for the high Ds, but you also need to have the detailed kind of 30-page proposal for the ones that are more S&C. So there's lots of different ways to consider disc within the LinkedIn environment and within networking in general and building relationships. But I definitely think that you're good. And that's why variety of content is so important, because you have got multiple different styles on the newsfeed and multiple different styles in your network. And one post that appeals to a high D is not necessarily going to appeal to a high C or S. But as long as you're mixing that up and giving that variety of different post types and different matching of styles, then you never know where your next client's coming from.
And I guess that's the bit, really, isn't it? It's because don't post for your own style, because you'll attract your own style people anyway. If you're trying to attract people who are different to you, you need to change your message that will attract them. Oh, Sam, this is fascinating. I could talk for hours on this. But then we're
well,
probably
I think the one thing that's fascinating is that, I've been talking about having a process, right? And I'm the least process oriented person out there, right? I did an extended disc profile, and I think there was a scoring in there against about out of 100 on process orientation, and my score was 1 out of 100. But I do believe that you should not necessarily avoid the things that you're not good at aren't your style. Like, I've had to get really good at process for my team, for my business to scale. Without process and systems, my business could never scale at the level it's scaling right now. So I've had to kind of really force myself to adjust and, perfect certain parts of what I need to learn in business in order to get better. And in fact, the post I recently did about having a process, and I did this horrible process map, like, most eyes would just look at it and go, oh, what's that? But I did this post about having a process for your pipeline. And this woman, like, messaged me underneath. She was in my 2nd degree network, so we weren't connected, but she was following me. She posted underneath saying, oh, this is totally what we need. We don't have a process in our business for sales and marketing. And I messaged her and we had a conversation in the inbox. We built the relationship. She said, I think we need to have a conversation. She invited her commercial directors and sales team. And, that turned into a piece of business, but it was me talking about process of all things. But process people, and she's very much on the kind of on the C side of things. She does have quite a lot of I in her, but she's very high C, and she was craving process in their business, and that's what she needed. So I did, write a piece of content that was totally against my style, but it turned into a new piece of business. It was a £15,000 deal, and it came from a piece of content that was totally against my typical style.
And that is amazing that you say that, because also, just because process isn't high, so our C's are both low and below the line, just because they sit there doesn't mean we can't do it. It's just that when we do it, it's quite exhausting for us. So that's it's fascinating. Oh, like I say, Sam, we could talk for hours, but I don't want you to give away too much. What I would love to say to you though is honestly, listeners, if you have found this as insightful as I have, you're probably thinking, I need to get more of Sam. How can people get hold of you, Sam?
Well, obviously, the easiest place is to connect with me on LinkedIn. There are only two Sam Rathlings in the world, and one is a male CEO of a tech company, and the other is me. So Sam Rathling on LinkedIn. It would be great when you connect, just to let me know that you found me through the podcast. That would be fantastic as a good start of the 10 for us to build the relationship. Want to say a massive thank you to you, Vic, for having me on. I'm super excited about your podcast, and I can't wait to listen to all of your other interviews.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for that, Sam. And I'll make sure that all your other socials are in the show notes as well, so people can connect with you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care.
Bye. How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.